Hey y'all, I'm Jerdy, and in this video, we're going to go over some Phase 5 BiS list options for Prot Paladin in Season of Discovery. So first, I want to have a disclaimer here. We are using really fresh and still in development simulators for Prot Paladin and SoD. I do trust the people who work on these things, and we are finding out a lot of new updates, errors, or things that work or don't work, or need to be buffed or whatever on the sims. But take what you get here, just a little bit of grain of salt, but this will put you in the right direction for items you want as a protection paladin. So first, I want to talk about the two different tier 2 sets that are available in Phase 5, which are Coreforged and Draconic. Coreforged is the tier 1 set bonus for us Prot Paladins. That's our Holy Shield set bonus, but with the tier 2 looks and stats on them. Draconic is the brand new set bonus introduced in this phase, and for Prot Paladins, it's focusing on our Reckoning, in which your Reckoning talent now has a 20% chance per talent point to trigger when you block. So if you fully spec into Reckoning, each block will guarantee a Reckoning proc. Now, what is Reckoning? It's when you get an extra swing per crit, or in this case, per block. I say extra swing in quotations because in reality, in vanilla, it just resets your swing timer, which is still really good with this set. The first set we're going to talk about is our 6-piece Prot, 2-piece Ret Draconic set. So I already talked about the 6-piece Prot set bonus, so let's talk about the 2-piece Ret set bonus, in that increases your damage done by your damaging judgments by 20%, and your judgments no longer consume your seals on the target, meaning when you cast your judgment, which isn't on the GCD by the way, your seal stays up until the timer falls off. This is huge and really crazy when you think about this is just on a 2 set. So of course we're going to pick this up, and our pieces for the Ret set will be our chest and the leg, since both of these sets individually offer 2% crit, meaning we're getting 4% crit from the 2 set along with the 2 set bonus. In regards to our rings, I'm going to go with the newly buffed ZG rings, the Overlord's Crimson Band and the Overlord's Onyx Band. They're both just really good DPS and mitigation rings with an 8% defense bonus when you have both of them together. Another good ring option would be Archimeteros, I'm sure I said that wrong, Ring of Reckoning with 28 stamina. And if you want more stamina, you can use the Heavy Dark Iron Ring with 20 stamina, putting us at 12k health in this build. Now your DPS will go down considerably, but if you're on prog and you just want more health and you get this ring early and your other tank didn't get it, then this is a good set to run. But like I said, I'm gonna run my ZG trinkets when I get them. In regards to my trinkets and my neck, I'm gonna be running Stylines and Pending Scarab, and then Hand of Justice. I'm running Hand of Justice because of that extra swing proc that works with our Reckoning procs with our tier set bonus, that also works with Seal of Martyrdom, that also works with Blaze Sphere Medallion, that also works with Wild Strikes. So everything's proccing, helping proc our Art of War to reset our exorcisms faster. So we're just going to be this giant tanky Beyblade pretty much. This trinket works well with this neck, that works well with our set bonus, that works well with our seal, and works well with Wild Strikes. It's all just coming together in this build. Other trinkets you can run if you really want to maximize your DPS and lose some mitigation is that you can go with Scrolls of Blinding Light, but you are competing with your Holy Paladin for this, and I don't want to get yelled at by Holy Paladins, so if your Holy Paladin's okay with you getting this first, great. If not, wait in line. But if you don't care about that extra DPS, which I think you should sometimes, and you just want full mitigation, go ahead and put Stylines back on, and then put on Onyxia Blood Talisman from Onyxia's Head Turnin'. And of course, how could I not talk about Thunderfury when talking about this build? This will be our BiS weapon for this build. Now, if you're in the 0 binding gang or 1 binding gang like I am, a really good secondary option is going to be Maladath. And if you're not getting Maladath, then Chromatically Tempered Sword would be next in line for that. Now, I know what you're saying. Jerdy, aren't your rogues going to want those? If your rogues are shooting for the best DPS spec, they should be running daggers. You may have swords rogues in your guild or in your run, but if you are just not getting Thunderfury, then you really want to shoot for Maladath once you get that 6-piece. And I can't stress this enough, you're only going for these slower weapons once you get your Prot 6-piece bonus. You're still going to use whatever fast weapon you're running, but Maladath still works well with the current tier 1 6-piece, as well as Thunderfury. And hopefully this doesn't like freak people out or anything, but if you are running with a rogue tank and they're getting Thunderfury and you get Maladath, that Thunderfury debuff on the target will actually lower your DPS around 100, if that matters to you. So just take that information how you will. And you'll notice our cape is puissant. Cape 40 attack power and 1% hit. That is because we want that extra hit. It's always good to have that hit. It puts us at 6%. If for some reason this is contested or you're just not doing Azure Ghost to get this anymore, you can consider the Zulian Tigerhide Cloak, which isn't nearly as good, or a defense cloak like Elementium Threaded Cloak is also really strong. Overall, this is a really strong build that I'm expecting most Paladins to run. It's the build I'm going to focus on running, with strengths being that we're running Malleable Protection. So we have our Shield Wall, the strongest defensive cooldown in the game. This is an attack power based build, focusing on Thunderfury and the Reckoning Extra Swing procs. The next build I want to talk about is more of your overall best DPS build according to the Sims, and that is the 4-piece Prot 4-piece Ret Draconic set. So I already talked about what the 2-piece Ret was, but the 4-piece reduces the cooldown of your judgment ability by 5 seconds. So again, more on judgment. So with this build versus the last build, we're focusing on spell power. We're going to focus on running Wrath instead of Improved Sanctuary, Sheath of Light instead of Malleable Protection, and Seal of Righteousness instead of Seal of Martyrdom. And this focuses on the weapon, the Truth Bearer, a new weapon for Paladins introduced in Phase 5 of Season of Discovery. I won't talk about this weapon too much because I already talked about it in my Phase 5 hype video, but it's a 1.5 one-hand sword with 60 DPS, 77 spell power, and a chance on hit to increase the damage done by 15 and attack speed by 30% for 8 seconds. A really, really good sword. We believe right now it drops off of Broodlord Lash Layer. The quest item drops called Blood of the Lightbringer, which will involve a really, really long chain, but that's all we know about the sword so far. With your jewelry, it focuses on Lightning Cell, a new trinket added to the game. With 1% hit, you gain a charge of Gathering Storm each time you cause a damaging spell critical strike. When you reach 3 charges of Gathering Storm, they will release firing an Unleashed Storm for 277 to 323 damage. Gathering Storm cannot be gained more often than once per every 2 seconds. 2-second cooldown. Phenomenal trinket for spell power, right? Same rings as the last build, still running Puissant Cape and Blaze Fury Medallion. So again, this is a spell power based build. It has great health, the best damage so far according to the Sims. The only caveat to this is that you are not defense cap and you do not have shield wall. I don't think this is a bad build by any means, but if you want to be def cap and you want to have shield wall, then you should go with the other build. But again, I'm not knocking this build because I know the person who made this is a great prop paladin. His name is Adrian in the Light Club Discord. Shout out to him for this build. So I don't think this is a bad build by any means. It's just not the one that I'm gonna run. If I said anything wrong in this, I'll add it in the comments below. But this is a good build if you want to try something different. The next set I'm going to talk about is not something I'm going to promote too much, but it is a set that does exist and will work well in Blackwing Lair, and that is 6-piece Coreforged Tier 2 and 2-piece Draconic Ret. So if you just love the Holy Shield Tier 1 set bonus, then you can still Coreforge your gear and have it, but still also run the Tier 2 Draconic Ret. And with that one, it's going to be chest and hands for your red pieces, because hands offers that extra hit that I think you'd want in this build. And we're going to run Brood Mother's Brooch with Stylines on this for your trinkets. The big thing about this build is that you have 12k HP with buffs, which is the most out of the 3 builds that I've mentioned so far. It just has significantly lower damage than the other 2. Another advantage with this set though is that it's the easiest progression of player power. If you substitute a piece of Coreforged Tier 2, it still counts towards the Tier 1 set. So if I have 5 pieces of Tier 1 Lawbringer and then 1 piece of Tier 2 Coreforged, it's still the 6th set of that Tier 1 set bonus, if that makes sense. Whereas the other sets, you'd have to wait to get 6 sets to fully update your gear. I'm not going to swap off my Tier 1 until I have 6 pieces of Tier 2. Again, I'm not going to talk about this too much because me personally, I'm not going to run this, but I'm going to have it there as an option in case you do want to run this. But just remember that they nerfed the Holy Shield set bonus by 20%. So I'm just letting y'all know. It does exist. If you just want to keep going with it, it'll work. But I just don't see it as strong as the other 2. Wowhead will also have a BiS list that goes over 6-piece Prot, 2-piece Ret. I'll post a link to that in the comments below. It's going to look similar to this, but with some differences, mainly focusing on more stamina than damage. Your BiS Libram in this phase will be a new Libram introduced called Libram of Avenging. We believe this is going to be from the Real vendor. I guess we'll find out tomorrow how much this costs. But when you equip it, your Avenger shield hits 2 fewer targets, but will hit its target 2 times. Sort of similar to how that glyph worked in Wrath and Cataclysm. Just remember when you are on trash, AoE, stuff like that, to take this Libram off, as Avenger shield is one of our biggest AoE dealing abilities. But for single target bosses, which is pretty much all of Blackwing Lair, you are going to rock this Libram. Now, your shields going into this phase, all 3 builds have Elementium Reinforced Bulwark, the car door as people call it, from Blackwing Lair. There is another shield that drops off Zul'Gurub called Aegis of the Blood God, which is a really good shield as well, and actually sometimes sims higher in damage, but it does have less stamina and less armor. And in regards to your shield, I strongly suggest just going with the better mitigation shield, but it's still a strong one, and you have multiple times a week to get that shield. And I know a lot of paladins have not seen drill borers drop at all. Apparently I got lucky, drop for me. So both shields are great, so don't knock one, but if you have both, pick Elementium over Aegis. In regards to our talent tree, we have changed things up a bit as we are going full into Reckoning and one-hand specialization, nothing in Holy, and I'm going Improved Judgment and Improved Seal the Crusader. It's kind of weird, but if I go into Improved Parry, the more I parry, the less I block, right? So I don't want to parry, I want to block for my procs. And don't forget, we get a new consumable in ZG, the Spirit of Zanza. I would recommend this one because you get 50 stamina and 50 spirit, and that is a chunky amount of health to get, which we will need on some fights like Broodlord, who we saw hitting some people for 8k. And then a little bonus, we saw data mined a Formula Magnificent Troll Shine, which is a new shield coating. When applied to target shield, it increases spell damage and healing up to 36 and increases spell critical chance by 1%. This is way better than the current shield buff we have right now, and will be our BiS shield consumable going into the next phase. Now, I just might get flamed for this, and I'm sorry if I do. I've talked to Agrind and Zyrene about the gear. I was kind of upset because I really thought that you'd be able to swap between Coreforged and Draconic at a whim. So as you're slowly upgrading your gear, like for me, I would just upgrade to Coreforged, and then once I got 6 set, swap it to Draconic, right? But that's not going to happen. It's a one-time commitment. So the unfortunate truth is that you're not really going to upgrade your gear until you get 6 set. So you're going to stick with your current gear until you get 6 tokens, and it has the 6 tokens that I've listed here if you want the BiS slots, right? So what I might get flamed for here is that I would actually really suggest that your guild or whoever you're running with, try and feed your tanks. I know what the comments are gonna say. I'm already ready for it. And maybe people in Light Club will disagree with me too, but we need all 8 slots to be BiS. That's not the case for some other classes. And luckily we only have limited competition with Hunters, Reds, and Holy Paladin, right? I'm sure my guild won't be happy hearing that if they watch my video, but it just feels like that's the best option because, like I said, I just can't upgrade until I have full set. It's just not going to happen. Even though we're Giga Threat tanks, fights like Veilistraz when someone gets Burning Adrenaline or taunt swaps, we're going to want that initial snap threat. There might be issues with threat if your DPS gets geared before you. So that's why I'm just stating here in this video, you may want to consider making sure that you get this gear. That way your DPS can always freely pump no matter what. And the last thing I'm going to say is if you're good with sims, you might notice that, hey, if I put Drakefang Talisman on or Cloak of Draconic Might, it sims higher. That's cool. I'm never going to advertise that you take DFT from a rogue or Cloak from any of your melee DPS when we have sets like this that have all uncontested items. So just understand that these sets are very strong and have no items that your DPS will want, and we're going to keep it that way because we just don't need it. Now, if a bunch of DFTs drop in your run, sure, take one after your melee get it. If a bunch of cloaks drop and they don't need it, go ahead and take it. And for all these builds, remember, you need Onyxia Scale Cloak for some fights. So remember, you need to have that cloak or you will die. on certain fights. So do not forget going into Blackwing Lair to have your Onyx CSGO cloak. I know other DPS cloaks are cool, but you will literally die. So make sure you have that cloak going into raid. It is technically BiS for some fights. Inarguable BiS even. And that's it for me, you guys. I'll have a link to all these builds in the description. Let me know what you think. Which build are you going to run with? Are you excited for Blackwing Lair and ZG and the new raid? Are you getting Thunderfury? Or are you like me and still only have one binding? Or do you have no bindings? Make sure to like and subscribe. Follow me on twitch.tv/DirtyJD. More videos in the future. And I will see y'all in Nefarian's Lair.